Pep Guardiola doesn't give one-on-one interviews very often. Here's probably why, because we're about to dissect and maybe tear apart some of his quotes, starting with this one. To reach the level of Barca, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Juventus, that is very complicated. You need time. Here's your kicker. A decade.
Yeah, good luck with that.
10 years.
No, well, he doesn't have 10 years. He doesn't have 10 years. And
is he right?
Well, because there's a history behind these clubs, and I think this is what he's getting to, that there is a history as to why Real Madrid is what they are, what Barcelona are, what they are, Bayern Munich, and perhaps Manchester City doesn't have that history. In fact, they don't have that history. However, in the world that we live today, where we want things accelerated, when we want things now, when we're paying a lot of money, if you're the owners of Manchester City, to make sure that you have the best talent available, a decade is not available for Pep Guardiola.
Listen, you look at the budgets. Manchester City matches all of those teams, and not exactly down in the doldrums.
No,
they won the Premier League a couple of years ago.
In somewhat of a defense of Pep Guardiola, I understand what he's getting at. To have continued success and maintain success, it takes more than just a strong first 11. You've got to have a squad. You've got to have a.
But you've got the money to pay for all that.
Yes, I'm getting there. You've got to have an academy. There are a lot of factors that go into that type of success that don't necessarily cross the white line. But to your point, Dan, no, he does not have a decade. And the concern is that he is now kind of making an excuse,
sure,
or a pre-excuse as to why Manchester City can't compete at that level. But let's also remember that City, 2 seasons ago, got to the semi-final of the Champions League. So he's walking on very thin ice here. As much as he may still be above ground, he can't keep playing like this.
Well, here's the thing: when you start making preemptive comments, when you start qualifying your comments and giving this sort of statements and this sort of opinions, it's because you know you were underwhelming the season before. It's because you know that you underachieved. You didn't achieve the things that you had set out to do. You didn't become the team that you thought you would be. Now, you're setting a stage in which you say, we're not going to be as good as those teams. And if you think we're going to be as good as those teams, it's going to take a while. It's already setting a path of, we may not be as good as people expect us to be. How is that supposed to make you feel when you're a Manchester City fan? And in fact, a Manchester City player for that matter. So what are we trying to attain? What are our goals? And if those goals are not realistic, then why are we putting those goals out there to begin with?
City's goals have got to be domestic to win the Premier League. Quite simply. Right now, I don't see City competing at the top end of the Champions League, regardless of how much money they have to spend. And that needs to be their focus, and then improving and slowly but surely closing the gap between themselves and the likes of the clubs that you mentioned.
Gap?
Yeah, look, unless by level of Barcelona and Real Madrid, he means everything they've won historically, in which case he's not going to need 10 years, he's going to need a freaking time machine. This makes no sense at all. Roman Abramovich came into Chelsea in 2003. Within 3 years, they had won the Premier League twice. Within 5 years, they were in a Champions League final, which they ended up losing on penalties. And if you believe in Jose Mourinho, they would have won several Champions League, but they got jobbed out of it by referees. The other thing is this process at Manchester City. It's not like Manchester City were a third division club when he walked in the door. Manchester City have won 2 Premier League titles. They've won FA Cups. They have a whole bunch of really good players who were there before his arrival. So the process is already underway. They have world-class youth facilities. They've got this enormous backroom staff. They have a director of football who works with him, who predates his arrival by several years. So you can't come out and tell me that it's year one of a 10-year project. I love Pep. I stick up for him all the time. But surely he can't mean what he seems to be saying here.